So now,
Gabby,
what about if one of us or one of each of us say something about you?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
So
first, we would like to welcome you to our group and thank you for giving us this time to talk to us so we can tell you how we feel about your book. I think that we all loved it. It was so easy to read. Like, we didn't know if it was going to be, well, we loved it. We, all of us,
Yes.
almost all of us read. We said, I don't know, a number of pages for each week, and there was in a session that one of us said like, oh, I read more than the ones we had to read. So we loved your book. Really, it was amazing. We learned about a lot of things we've never heard of. Teresin. We like the common is outfits, but we didn't know about it. And well, we loved it. Really, really. Like, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
we read something about how you inspire for writing the book. That you hear a story. Could you please tell us something about that?
Yes. So I had been researching, but maybe I start from the very beginning before I tell the story about the hairdresser, because that's part of the story. But The Lost Wife, it took many years to write, and many things happened for me to hear certain stories that became the book that you read. So I had just had my second baby, my daughter Charlotte, and I had written 3 books before The Lost Wife. And when my second child was born, it became very, very difficult for me to find the time to do my writing. And to make myself have the focus and the energy to continue writing, I thought to myself, surely creative people and artistic people in the world have suffered far greatly than just an overworked mother trying to find a way to create. And my mind sort of went one day, to this thought that what happened in the Holocaust? Could creative people, whether they were musicians or artists, did they find a way to create when everything was taken away from them? So this question of whether an artist could create if everything physical was stripped away really became that question that became The Lost Wife. So I started to read and to research to find an answer about this question of, were artists able to steal artistic supplies? Did people smuggle in instruments in order to create? Before I wrote even a single sentence of The Lost Wife, I was trying to understand how people, their creative spirit could not be extinguished from them. And the first piece of physical evidence that I read was about the Czech artist Dina Gottliebova, who is in the book, who does the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs mural in Terezin. And there was an article in the New York Times about Dina basically saving her life and her mother's by getting this, by Dr. Mengele knowing that she had done this mural of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I started to, I went to the museum in Washington, D.C. to listen to the oral history of Dina and how she was a young art student in Prague before the war came, how she was deported to Terezin, and how she started to become part of her own resistance to do her own paintings using smuggled supplies. And I started to dream of writing a book that was purely not going to be a love story, that really was going to be a book about an artistic person's journey during the Holocaust to create and to not have their spirit extinguished. And my agent called. Do you know what like a literary agent is? She's the one who like sells your books. She called and she said, I just want to make sure you're still writing with the new baby and everything. And I said, no, I'm working on a book. I'm doing the research now. I want to research artists in the Holocaust, specifically in this concentration camp called Terezin, where there were a lot of working artists who were able to somehow navigate the oppression of their situation, but find the means to create. And she told me she thought this was a terrible idea, that no one would really want to read this book. And then, you know, the Holocaust was not a subject that she thought would, you know, draw a wider audience. This was before all these World War II books kind of came out. You know, The Lost Wife was one of those first novels of this. It's coming in the Spanish language quite late, actually. The book was published in 2011 in the United States, just so you know. So I hung up the telephone with her, and I was so upset that she didn't think my idea was a good one. And I had a babysitter that day, and I thought, well, what am I going to do now? Because my agent thinks it's not a very good idea. And I don't know if any of you are mothers or know people who have babies, but you never get any time for yourself to do things to make yourself look attractive, really, when you have two really small children. So I thought I would go to this very small salon to get my hair cut. And it's a salon where all these old ladies go to, and they put the thing over their hair, and you can walk in and not need an appointment. It's not fancy at all. And I sat down in the chair, and I was thinking about what my agent said, and I was so upset because it was something that I knew I had to write no matter what, but I was upset that she didn't have the passion for the idea. And out of the corner of my ear, I heard this story being told by the stylist next to me, who had someone come into his salon who had gone to a wedding, where at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding, the bride's grandmother and the groom's grandfather had never met before. And throughout the evening, the grandfather kept on saying to the bride's grandmother, "You look very familiar to me. You look very familiar to me." And at the end of the evening, he convinced her to roll up her sleeve. And when he did, he saw the number of her tattoo from Auschwitz on her skin. And he looked at her and he said, "You were my wife." And I was like, what? You know, it's a crazy story. And I can write a book around one question, you know, this question of how could an artist create if everything was taken away from them? But this story made me full of other questions. You know, why did they think each other had died? What was their first love story? Because obviously they had been married before the war. How did they become separated? Who became their second marriages since they thought each other had died? But most importantly, and really what the essence of The Lost Wife, you know, is for me, is how does one survive after great suffering and after great darkness? How does one find light, you know, in the sense of making The Lost Wife almost a charcoal painting? There is great darkness, but there is also beautiful light. So it all happened really because of a sequence of events. You know, had I not had my second child at that point in my life, like I think if I were to have that idea now, it would be a very different book now that I have grown children. But I had babies, you know, so those scenes where, you know, Rita gives birth and she's given a dirty blanket and she kind of cringes, but she takes it because she wants to cover her baby. That also was coming from this dance in my own life, that I had a fresh blanket for my baby. Or my son, who was in preschool, would come home and his knapsack would be full of drawings, you know, and crayons and all this abundance of things. And here I'm reading diaries about people who are trying to create with a scrap of ash, you know. So it was this play of seeing my own life in contrast to, you know, how people could still try and manage to survive with so little. But also this sense of, you know, how do we make the best of what we have? You know, it was so inspirational to interview, because I later would go to Prague and I interviewed artists who worked in Terezin, and for them to share their stories with me. And some of them were in their 90s, some were in their 70s. You know, it was a holy sort of experience for them to share that part of their story with me so I could put it into The Lost Wife. So I always tell my readers that, you know, the lost wife is filled with the voices of ghosts, you know, that spoke to me, like because the survivors shared so much of the people they lost and their stories. So it became like a very sacred document for me to chronicle this artistic journey of people who yes, experienced tremendous suffering and loss, but still found a path into the light. I hope you could understand my English.
Yes, yes,
Very good. I would like to make you a question, and
yes.
because when you said this thing about the salon, when you heard about this
Mm-hmm.
this
Couple,
story,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was also thinking about Lenka
Mm-hmm.
went to Praga in 1945 when the war was finished, when she went to see Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
And then she knew Carl and she got married with him in Paris, I think about 1946, probably. And I think that
I think she gets married to him very soon, like very soon after. I mean, weeks after the war ends. I mean, no,
okay,
I don't remember, but very close, like 45.
1945. And then I suppose they came to America, and Joseph was here in America too. I don't understand very well if she came also to New York or to some part of America, but I don't know if it was exactly New York. But I was thinking, oh, they were too close, and she lived with Carl about 52 years. So most part of their lives, they lived very close, and they didn't knew they were very close. So it is very I don't know how he was always thinking about her with this I don't know how you say it, remordimiento, with this Miss Lolis, help me. He was always thinking about Lenka, and she thought that he was dead. But they don't knew that they were very close together.
So I have a few things to say about what you are talking about specifically in the book. So before I started writing the book, it was very important to me to create two tones, and also two languages of loss, that Joseph's sense of language and the colors of his loss, because I saw this book very artistically. So my mother's a painter. I wanted to be a painter, but I ended up being a writer. So I like to talk about colors a lot. And so Joseph, I feel one of the reasons he, and I don't know the word you used in Spanish, but I wanted to create his voice to be full of longing, that he never forgets her. He never stops looking in his heart for her. He sees the back of a head. He's haunted by the fact that he left the woman he loved behind. And so in my ear, when I wrote him, I imagine him like the strings of a violin, like this, legato, that it's very sad and it's mournful, but it's full of this soul. And he's very romantic, but he's the color blue for me. Like he's all blue. And this is the way I see his haunting the water of his parents' death. And his memory is not told in a linear way. It's not straightforward in the book. His memories come because they're triggered by something. The taste of a strawberry reminds him of Karlovy Vary and a kiss. The back of a neck reminds him of Lenka. So there are these trigger points that bring him back, And Lenka, I created her voice to mirror the way that Holocaust survivors shared their story with me, which was that it was always told in a very linear journey, that it almost had a staccato, like very tightly wound, sometimes very abrupt way of telling very hard things. And because she believes that when she finds out that he dies, something in her closes. It's like she doesn't look back. But the fact that he made a mistake and he left her behind, he keeps on trying to revisit, almost to self-soothe himself, that he regrets that he left her behind in Prague. And I think that's essential, because she never once regrets that she stayed with her family. She even chooses to go a second time when she's in Terezin, and she looks forward and she does not look backwards. And when she suffers, she continues to take a step forward. He's not that character, because I didn't, first of all, it's very boring to have two people the same, but it was a conscious thing to have their melodies be very different. So when I say that it mirrored the way I heard Holocaust survivors tell a story, it was always the same. It began, my life was very beautiful. My parents and I and my brother and my sister and my cousins, we all lived in a beautiful house, or even if it wasn't beautiful, it was warm and there was love. And I remember my mother's palachinko, or I remember my mother's cookies. And it becomes this silken cocoon of remembrance of childhood before the war. But then you start ticking away things happening when there's the Nazi occupation. And first they're trying to say it's not so bad and that maybe they can survive. And yes, it's hard, but they still have each other and there's still love. But then as it descends into the Holocaust, the language becomes so sparse. It's like it starts with the velvet and the Bohemian crystal, and it's very sensual and it's very rich. Occupation is sort of this graphite gray and it's dark. But when she gets to Terezin, you feel the dirt underneath her feet. You feel the wood of the barracks. It's, the textures actually change from velvet to wood to dirt, from all these little things. And by the time Lenka gets to Auschwitz, the language is skeletal. It's like, and then my beloved sister was shot in the head. There's no cushioning of this language. It's all very harsh, because that's what happened. And the heart becomes very tight, because to even say my beloved sister was shot in the head, it's gut-wrenching. And so how does one say that? They don't talk about it in a romanticized, velvety way. So I really wanted to keep that through the whole way of the story, and then have his melody kind of come this sort of in this wave of memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, Clau.
Hello, Alyson.
Hello.
Thank you to being with us. And my question is, I think as a writer, you had some different endings for the book. So if so, I would like to know a different one at the end of the book, because
you wanted more. You wanted more of an ending. Is that what you're?
Okay, my ending for the book is again at the river, like a first time, with their memories, and so I could like other ending for the book.
More like that.
If you can, I don't know.
Okay, well, the reason I ended the book the way I did is because I very much wanted to maintain a circular composition for a couple reasons. One, that in the Jewish tradition, when we get married, our wedding band is unbroken. There's no, it's very smooth and it's very simple, but it's to symbolize that the love has remained unbroken. And so I really love this sense of maintaining this circle, that you begin and you end at the same chapter, because the first love is the last love. The last love is the first love. Yeah. So there is a certain symbolism and poetry to that I wanted to maintain its purity for. And I felt that if I continued past that, yes, I would fill your brain with images of them being reunited and the dancing and the joy of coming from the wedding. Yeah. But to me, as an artist, it almost cheapens it by creating that type of dialogue. It's better for me to close the circle and the symbolism of his hand being placed on her hand, because I don't know if you realize in the book, Joseph says there are 2 times in your life you are sealed to another person for eternity. The first time is when your baby, your beloved's hand slips into yours. And the second time is your baby's finger wrapping around yours. So her hand and his hand sealing together brings that circle to a close.
Okay.
And to me, in my mind as the writer, it begins the next dance, the next chapter. And the reader should now think about, oh, what happens? Do they move in together? Do they date? Do they get married? Like, to me, to feel that it's not necessary, because I give you the tools that that they are going to get to be together. So I wanted the poetry there.
Yeah.
So, I have heard from many readers, they wanted one more chapter, but to me, I want to say to my readers, be brave and imagine their next chapter, the next dance, their next story. You don't need me. I'm not your guide for that. I've given you the tools.
Yeah, because I was reading and what? After a conversation.
Right. But this is, I don't want to say it's lazy on the reader's part, but you can imagine the conversation. I don't have to the conversation. The conversation is they're really happy. I mean, I once made a joke when I was speaking, when someone asked me the same question. I said, come on, you don't believe he looks at Lenka and he says, I'll see you at the grandchild's bar mitzvah. Like, they love each other,
Yeah.
So.
A ver, es Eli y luego Emita.
Okay, hi. I right now understand why do you the point of view of Lenka. I love that point of view about the colors of the people colors, because you describe very well that characters, and I love that part of the books, because and right now I understand why did you do that, because you came from a family of artistic family, and but for me was an interesting element in your book, because the colors of the people tell me a lot about their essence, and that's very interesting for me, and I appreciate your time that you stay with us. That's all.
Thank you.
Emita. Emita.
Hi, Alyson.
Hello.
I'm Emma, and I really loved the end of the book. I think I'm not sure if what I'm thinking is right, but I think what you try to say is to connect the reader with the book. I mean, Claudia can think something about, I don't know, anything about the hand on the hand on the other hand, and I can imagine something else. So every one of us can make our own
Ending.
finish
Yes.
end of the book. I don't know if that's the correct.
No, but this is actually the
way
way
to
in
say.
all of my. This is the way in all of my books. So I know my Spanish publisher, who's done a wonderful job, has only published now 2 books in Spanish. You have another one coming, but if they publish more, all of my books have a very similar ending, where I bring you to a point where there is closure, but it's not everything is answered. So I used to do ballet too. And so for me, in my mind, I think of me with my reader extending my hand as a dance. And I say, and now you take over and you imagine. Because I don't, as a reader, not even as a writer, I don't like things that are wrapped up too neatly, where and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. It becomes to me too trite. I don't know. I don't feel in life everything has an answer that can be tied up in a bow, and things are very complex. And quite honestly, their relationship, I mean, you could write an entire new book on what happens to Lenka and Joseph, having had the complexities of their marriage, having had what happened to them, and being at this stage in their life. What does love, you know, the question for me would be, how do you experience love at this point in your 80s from when you knew each other when you were in your 20s? And you know, it's a beautiful gift to be given each other late in life to experience a new love, but it will also have a lot of complexities. So it's not something I could do in one chapter. So I think it's very beautiful to say you imagine, and as you said, you create, it encourages a relationship with the book itself and the characters, that you feel you know them and that you imagine this or what you hope for them. And it becomes this collaborative sort of experience. I mean, I had a man write to me who was a psychologist. His wife had given him the book because she loved it. And he read it and he wrote to me and he said, Alyson, I have to ask you what you think. I imagine that if Lenka and Joseph met at the wedding and they were both married, because that's how he was thinking, you know, Joseph would leave his wife to be reunited with Lenka, but Lenka would not leave Carl to be with Joseph. She wouldn't make that decision. What do you think? And I never thought that before, because I always knew that I was going to have them widowed, you know, meeting at this wedding. So I had to think about my own characters, and I said, I think you're right. I think that despite how much she loved Joseph in the past, knowing that Carl had saved her and that they had this good marriage, she couldn't leave him. She wouldn't. But I never thought before a reader asked me that.
Yeah.
But I think that
Thank you very much.
Joseph realized how important was Amalia when she died. I think that probably he couldn't also leave her because he doesn't love her as he loved Lenka, but he was grateful with her.
Yes. So, you know, Amalia, her colors for me that before I wrote her, I wanted her palette to be what I describe as dishwater gray, you know, like she's a living ghost. And this idea that every night Joseph went to bed with someone who was alive, but who was dead inside because of the loss and the survivor's guilt of having lost her family. But Lenka was alive in his mind, but he thought she was dead. And that contrast to me was very interesting. I do believe, and I tried to say this in the book, that both were marriages that had love, but they were very different kinds of love. And they were a love for survival. I mean, Carl picks her up from a trench or a ditch and literally, you know, takes this broken bird and brings her to America and gives her a life with a child and helps Lenka move forward. Both Amalia and Joseph are haunted by the past, haunted by the fact that they left the ones they love behind. The story of Amalia is a true story that was shared with me by someone who was from Austria, who did find a letter in the street when she was little, did write to someone in America who agreed to sponsor her and her sister. And when they were boarding the boat, they would not let her sister on. And so for the rest of her life, she was haunted that she left her sister. So this sense that they both had these boxes of grief that were underneath the marital bed, in a way, this metaphor of boxing their grief, enabled them to partner and to forge on despite being quite broken and haunted. So he did love Amalia, but he didn't love her the same way he loved Lenka. But to me, it's funny, my two favorite scenes in the whole book, the ones where I got very emotional writing them and I get emotional talking about them, is Amalia's funeral, because things happen when you're writing. I don't write an outline for my books because I like it to feel like I'm painting, that one brushstroke builds from the next, and then I start seeing something and then something else happens. So I was, you know, writing, not knowing what would happen, but I was describing her memorial service. I started, both my husband and my daughter played the violin. So I was having, you know, Isaac play the violin. And then because I see it sort of in my mind where I write one thing, but then like a a color or a brushstroke having to have a response from the next brushstroke, I thought, well, how does Joseph hear the music? And when I asked myself that question, I thought, what if he hears love in the music? What if he realizes that his best friend might have loved his wife? And what does that make him feel? And immediately I knew what it made him feel was that he was happy that she could have experienced. I'm going to cry because it's like when you're so dead from such loss, to know that anything could give you a spark. And then you think back and you think, well, she was always tapping her foot. So maybe it could have even been a platonic love, but they had a connection. You know, I never go in to say what kind of love it is, but it was something that they bonded, that she felt alive. And to me, that's very beautiful, you know, and it shows that Joseph wasn't trying to possess his wife. He was just trying to get a life where they could experience some sort of light, you know, some sort of positivity. And then Lenka's scene with Carl, that's actually that scene where he says, tell me again, you've loved me for 52 years, and he puts his arm out to dance with her. I went to a nursing home to meet someone I knew whose aunt was in Auschwitz, and her niece wanted to record her telling her story to me. But when we got there, it was too painful. And every time I asked her a question about her time there, she would say, my husband loved me. She put herself in a trance. She'd just say, and my husband, when he was dying, told me, tell me again, you loved me for 52 years. Tell me again. And she's closing her eyes in the bed in the nursing home, and she puts her hand out and she says, and we danced in his hospital bed like this. And that's all she kept on saying for like 30 minutes before I stopped. And when I left the room, her niece said, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't get anything. And I said, no, I got something so beautiful, you know, so very beautiful. Because I could see it. I could see, you know, it's just so beautiful. So to me, I was crying with that one. I tried to pull these feelings from anyone who would speak to me and put them someplace in the book. And it didn't come in a natural order, you know, and I didn't know that I would write a book, a chapter where Carl would die like that. But when it happened, I was pulling, you know, and anyone on this call who is a creative person, or even if you cook, it's that feeling of like, oh, I'm making a sauce, but it needs something green. So I pull my cilantro and I put it in, and then I taste it, but it's missing this. But oh, I remember I had this in the refrigerator, and I pull it and put it. This is what it's like in my mind when I'm writing.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay.
¿Quién más, chicas, quiere hacer preguntas? Who else? Paola y Mónica luego. Y luego
Creo que estaba antes Moni.
Entonces, a ver, Moni y luego Paola.
Hi, Alyson. Now that we have finished the book, we know that Joseph was looking for Lenka during several years through the Red Cross, but in New York. Why did he never go to Europe to look for her?
Well, I think a few reasons. One, you know, the communists came quite quickly into Prague at that time. So going back into Czechoslovakia was not going to ever be sort of an easy thing to sort of go back. And also, I think when the Red Cross, you know, gave him this information, he believed it. I think it was something where everyone was hearing more often than not that no one survived. I mean, you would see the pictures in the paper of these piles of cadavers and everything. So, you know, it actually never even occurred to me that I would try and figure out a way that he would try and get back there, because I didn't think it was even feasible for him to do that. And I think he really felt that at that point, like everyone was looking at the Red Cross for information at that point.
Okay. Paola.
Hi, Alyson.
Hi.
I just want to thank you for this book, for this amazing book. I just want to tell you that it came to us in these times, like pandemic times. You told us your story from where you got your inspiration. It makes a lot of sense at these times for us. I'm not comparing those times with these times, but it really was like a comfort to read your book during this lockdown. and to realize that we as humans can overcome any challenge that comes with us. So I just thank you that this was very, very, very special book. I really enjoyed it, and seeing you here, it's really amazing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, actually, that's so lovely that you said that about the book having special meaning during this time of a pandemic, because it is so hard for all of us. And we have lost so much of our everyday freedoms and being able to see each other in a way. And I mean, you know, it's hard. I can't really see my parents as often as I can because my son is doing a lot of, you know, baseball, and I'm scared that they'll get sick. So it's, you know, these limitations that you can't imagine, you know, a year ago. But I think when you look to history in times like this, it does give us a healthy perspective that we cannot deny that we're all suffering and feeling really lousy right now. But if some people can endure such terrible hardship and get through it, then we have to look at that, and it has to fortify us somehow. So I would never know that my book would resonate like that in a time like this, but it makes me happy that you said that. So
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
¿Quién más, chicas? Betty ya quiere aplaudir. Betty, Luzma, Miss Luzma.
Hi, Alyson. I'm Luzma.
Hi.
I just want to tell you that I really enjoyed your book. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reading it. How many of you are in this group? Like, I'm trying to see, like 10?
We are
We're supposed to be 23.
23.
but
Okay.
we now in this moment there are five that are not here now.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful.
Yes. A
Alyson,
ver,
I have a question.
Mhm.
You're saying that your mother, it's what is it, like an artist?
Yes. A painter.
And a painter, yes. And in the book, you mentioned that when Lenka went to sleep, her mother would tell her like stories, but not like typical bedtime stories. They were like talking about the colors of the sea. Were all these like your personal bedtime stories?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of my mother in this story. The funny thing is, and I haven't told this in a long time, but you're making me remember things that I used to share about this book when it came out. And so before the book went to my publisher, I had my father read the book, because my father is an engineer and he's very precise. So if he notices there's like a, you know, missing comma, you know, he makes everything really perfect before I send it to my, you know, editor. And so my dad told me that this was his favorite book I had ever written. And I said, well, Daddy, which was your favorite character in the book? Because I always ask him that. And he was like, He goes, you know, it might sound really crazy, but I just loved Lenka's mother. And I thought to myself, it's mommy, you know, because I even describe her the way I imagine my mother, the bedtime stories, you know, this scene, even when he kisses her and he's dirty, it's like my mother, because I could see her being like, ugh, but okay. And then there's a scene in the book where Lenka wonders about her mother's paintings in the locker room in the apartment. And she can't put in her mind the woman who is like the head of the household with the young person who was this artist who did these very, you know, sensual and strong paintings. And that was me as a child, because my mother, she's very refined. She's very formal. She's not someone who hugs or is very warm. She's a very strong sense of how she likes everything. Everything has to look perfect and beautiful. But then I would look at her paintings in the walls and I would be like, they're so modern and they're so sensual and they're so full of, and I could not reconcile the person who mothered me with the person who had been this artist. And so I put that in the book, but it was funny that my father didn't consciously realize I was writing about my mother, but he fell in love with that character. So it's nice.
Yes, it's because you, in that stories, the mother always asks her questions, not about nouns, but about adjectives. Yes, and I was impressed too about that, because I said I would never have thought to tell or ask a story to my daughter about how do you feel the transparency in the water, or it was always an adjective, and it is different as we used to do every time. And I also wanted to tell you that we discussed many times about these hard decisions that they have to make. For example, in the when Lenka decided to stay with her family, and Joseph wanted to be with her, but he also wanted to be with her parents, and finally he decided to go with his family, thinking that he could probably help Lenka and her family to go then to America. But in that moment when he went to London, and then when they went to in the ship to America, the thing that happened with the ship, we all suppose that he was going to live with his family there in America, and finally the things were totally different. And what would have happened if Lenka had gone with him? No. So we decided that in these things always is the destined.
It's true.
So,
and how one thing changes everything, and everything can change in an instant. It's true. If she had gone, and then what would have happened if she and Joseph died on the Athenia, but Verushka and the parents lived? Would they have tried to get her parents over? I mean, there's so many things that can change a destiny. And the Athenia part of the book was, from someone I interviewed who was on the Athenia, and his memories of that night of the torpedo and what happened with, the second boat that came and crashed into one of the lifeboats, and seeing that. So all of this is harvested from people who, in 2007 to 2009, when I was researching and writing the book, who were willing to just talk to me. And many of them are no longer here anymore, which is so sad, but there's a part of them in The Lost Wife.
Yes. ¿Alguien más, chicas, que quiera comentar algo o presentarse o decir? A ver, Betty y luego Clau.
Hello, and I want to tell you that we love, as my friends said, we love your book. Even I like the end. and I want to thank you for having the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reading it. And I'm so happy to speak to you in Mexico through Zoom.
Yes. Yes. Clau, querías preguntar.
No, it's just a comment. Alyson, I'm sure that we were living in Terezin for a month, something like that. I'm not sure. And thank you, because this story made us looking for information about that places, about the way that the people was living. So thank you very much, because right now I know many more things about that, the Holocaust of the Second World War. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
And about Rembrandt.
Oh, yeah.
The artistic.
Yes, I looked for the pictures that you mentioned there. The Judith wife.
Yeah,
the man with the
golden helmet.
Yes, and this thing that you said about the gold, that he was not using, and she also can create
the reflection of light. So that actually is a true story, that when I was listening at the Holocaust Library to the video of Dina Gottliebova, who is the artist who did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, when she got to the part in her personal story, when she was talking about working in the Lauscher department in Terezin, that's where they were doing the copies of, she was doing postcards, but Rita was in the book. She's copying the old master paintings. Dina said that same thing. She said, I was doing these postcards, but every day there was a woman behind me who was forced to do copies of old master paintings, and that she could create this reflection of light without gold leaf. And I don't know how she did it, whether she took mica from a rock and she, you know, she ground it into her pigment, but out of nothing she could create this. And it was a very special and powerful moment in my research, because I wrote that down and she said, I don't remember her name, but she had this incredible gift. And at that point, I put my pencil down and I said, I want to make sure I listen every time I interview someone for those nameless footnotes in someone's story, someone that they remember who had a gift. And if they don't remember their name, I'm going to make sure they're remembered in the book. I will give them a name and I will honor their gift. So it was so important to me to take that, because as an 80-year-old woman, she was still remembering that young girl behind her who could do this, but she couldn't remember her name, but she had this gift. So, oh, but I have one more story that I have to tell you.
Okay.
So I'm so overtired. I've been up since 4:30 in the morning because I flew from Minnesota with my son this morning, but it feels very good to speak to you because I can look at your faces and know you really appreciate my book. So I'm going to give you a special story.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
So after this moment, when I heard Dina Gottliebova mention this person who she didn't remember her name, and I made this vow to myself that I was going to, every time someone mentioned someone who had a gift, put them in the book. I listened super carefully. And so another time in Dina's interview, she said, every night that I went to sleep in Terezin, I would open my window and I could hear Carl Froelich playing the violin in the courtyard outside my bedroom. And when I heard his music, I was transported for a few minutes each night from someplace terrible to someplace beautiful through the music. Yeah. But she said his name, you know, so I write this down and I write Carl Froelich's name down. And I make a star saying I need to make sure that I honor the fact that this man played the violin and it affected this woman in this terrible place. But I assume Carl Froelich died because, you know, 95%, 97% of people did not make it out of a concentration camp, even if it was Terezin, where most of them were deported to Auschwitz. So a year after the book comes out, I get an email through my author website, and the woman writes to me and she says, I was given The Lost Wife as a gift, and my father's name is in the book. My father is Carl Froelich, the violinist. And, you know, he has been in many nonfiction books mentioned, but he's never been in a novel. And I want to thank you for honoring him, you know, by putting him into your book. And I was, you know, so excited. And she said, you know, I am not a violinist like my father, but I am a cellist. And I have a brother and a sister, and they both are, my brother is a choreographer for the New York City Ballet, and my sister is a retired ballet dancer. So at that time I was researching a book. It's not translated into Spanish, but make sure you let Planeta know that you like my books, because I hope they'll publish my other books. But my book, The Garden of Letters, is about a cellist in the Italian resistance. So I wrote to this woman, I said, it makes me so happy to hear from you. To know that she told me that her father survived not only Terezin, but Auschwitz, and that he later married her mother, who was a French pianist, who he met in a displaced persons camp after the war, and they came to America. So, and he taught the violin for many years afterwards, you know, once he got to America. So I asked her if I could take her to lunch to hear more about her story, and to ask her if she'd share why she was drawn to the cello, because I was working on a character that is a cellist. So we met for lunch and we had this wonderful time. And so much of what she shared about why she was drawn to the cello, I used to create the character in my next book. So it's very beautiful. One character who I put as this little footnote, I get in touch with his daughter who is now in her 60s, and then she becomes into the next book. So a year after that, she writes to me again and she says, you know, my sister is very jealous that she didn't get to, you know, meet you like we went out for lunch. Would you be our guest at the New York City Ballet? My brother has given us tickets. So I said, yes, but I want to take you out for dinner if you're going to be so generous with the ballet tickets. So I meet them in front of Lincoln Center, which is on the upper, you know, west side in Manhattan. And I'm flanked by the children of this person that had I not put his name in the book, had I invented a name, none of this would have happened. So we go out to dinner afterwards, and at dessert, her sister reaches into her purse and she brings out this little French ceramic pillbox. And she says, we want to give this as a gift to you. We know you're now working, because then I started working on a book called, it's actually translated in Spanish now, The Velvet Hours. It's about a French courtesan. So she knew I was now working on a new book. And she said, we know you're working on something French, so we want to give you something that belonged to our mother that was French Limoges from our mother. She said, our mother passed away a few months ago, but when we would visit her in hospice care, her favorite thing that she loved would be to ask us to read from your book the passage where you describe our father playing the violin, because she said no one ever captured how beautifully, you know, their father played. And so she loved to hear my words, and they wanted me to have something from their family. So I have this little French Limoges box on my dresser, and every time I see it, it reminds me that it's something so small as putting in a name can transform your life. Yeah. And it serves as a reminder that you should, I don't know, like take care, you know, and listen to those ghosts that people are all around us, I think. So yeah, that's a story.
Oh, it's really wonderful to have you here. We never thought you was going to answer us. I decided to find you and I wrote you, and I never thought that you were going to answer, and being here is spectacular. We really appreciate this time that you are having with us, and this will mean for us something very, very special, because your book was special, and having you here and listen to all the things that you are telling to us, I think that your novel will be for us very more special than we thought. So
maybe I wanted to tell you something else, because I am thinking about the gift that Lenka gave to her granddaughter when he was married. I was thinking that maybe this gift symbolize to remember our fathers, or pain of our fathers, or family that suffer before. But maybe if we can keep something, he keep the pain or the draw about her very close friend and her baby. But it's a little, I don't know how can I say, but it's a hope, like hope in your life, because a lot of people suffer, but we can conserve all the very good things, or the best of, or maybe the essence of the people that we lost in different kinds. I don't know. I was thinking that gift represents something that we can keep or conserve in our life. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And even the fact that she puts her own blood into the painting is very symbolic, because it's like she's merging her blood with the heartache of her friend, and it's all entwined. It's this, shared experience of suffering, of lost life, but also the continuity of life. And so it's, you know, that's life. Nothing is easy, and it's complex, and there is loss and there is suffering, but there is also the friends that we have, the ones who, even with Rita not making it, she kept all this time the picture of Adi, and in that way Adi still lives because he is in that picture, remembered, and now it goes to the next generation of her granddaughter telling the story. And so it's very layered, that painting, to me, you know. So you're right. It is all of that, and it's complex, and it's, you know, it's not black and white, it's the red of blood, of life and death.
Okay. ¿Alguien más, chicas?
I would like.
A ver si, Miss Amita.
Alyson, once again, I want to thank you. I never thought that at this time of my life, I could ever meet someone like you. You really have the gift, as you said about your sister, and you have a family of artists, but you have the gift. Don't lose it. Go on writing, and I hope I will have the time to keep on reading you. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for such a lovely message.
Raquel.
It means a lot. Thank you for all your kind words. And I hope more of my books will come to you in Spanish. And I'm just so happy to see your faces and to feel that I'm not writing alone, that people around the world read me, makes my heart feel very good. So thank you. You did a favor to me as well tonight. I go to bed with a smile on my face, and my heart is full.
And we have a chat in our phones, and you don't know how many things we investigate about you. Raquel.
I just want to tell you, to say you congratulations. Your book has generated us a revolution of feelings. You have made us travel in time through history, and you have also made us travel within ourselves. Thank you very much. It was very, very nice, and it was a beautiful book. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That makes me so happy.
Yes, and we are closing the story with, how do you say, con broche de oro?
With this incredible gift, Alyson. Thank you so much, really.
So thank you so much. Well, I hope one day we can meet in the person.
Yes, of course. And
for the next book, no, we have to read another book.
Yes,
So.
Maybe you can you need to space it out. Don't read too much of me, but I think in January this year, Planeta published The Velvet Hours, which is it's based on a true story of a courtesan in Paris. So, and now they have bought another book of mine, The Secret of Clouds, but it's not translated yet. So hopefully they continue to publish me in Spanish. It's been wonderful to get the response from my Spanish readers. It's really been very strong.
And you have a story about Van Gogh.
Yes, but it's not in Spanish yet. So that was the book before The Lost Wife. So maybe go on Facebook on Planeta's web and write a message and say, we love Alyson's book. Please publish them all, and they can. You can read
Gaby, ¿vas a decir algo? I want to tell you that when we end our sessions, we used to have a picture with our
mug of coffee.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you can join us.
Okay.
And maybe if someday you come around here, Mexico,
I would like that.
You can tell us. You could text us.
Yes,
and we would.
Wonderful.
Yes, we will be very grateful to see you here.
Okay.
So, smile, everybody smiling.
Say cheese.
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 Okay.
You got it?
Yes.
Yes.
So, thank you again. This is really, really, really something amazing. I think that we are going to go to bed now very happy.
Oh, good.
No?
Yes.
Me
So,
too.
thank you very much. And
All week we
Thank
were
you.
wondering if you would be with us, but finally it came
applause.
true.
This is the book
Thank
in
you.
Spanish.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
And then we are going to give you the recording. Ah, el aplauso, sí, el aplauso. ¿Cómo era, Raquel? ¿Cómo era el aplauso?
Trabajó en
Reaction.
Ah, sí. Many applauses.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
maybe we can upload the recording to YouTube because it's going to
Yes.
be very, I don't know if it's heavy or how do you call it?
Heavy.
And we can send you the link if you want
Okay,
to
perfect. That's
watch it or
wonderful.
to share it.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Okay, so I'm going to say goodnight and get in my pajamas. And thank you for making me a happy writer. And stay healthy and safe and keep reading. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Gracias. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Chicas, mandaron, o sea, la foto de la taza, creo que se me borró. ¿Sí la tienen ustedes?
Gaby,
¡Bravo, chicas! Les tengo un Kahoot. ¿Quieren contestarlo o ya no?
no, ya no.
Oye, Rosy,
Mejor cuando nos mandas el próximo libro.
No, que próximo
no,
día
ahorita.
les voy a mandar la actividad que quedó pendiente. Ni crean que se libra.
Ok. Tarea.
Luego ya nos comparte Raquel el recording, ¿no? Pero bueno, pues creo que fue un buen cierre, un